Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is our Ijebu princess, who is also going to tell us why the Fidipote and the Fuchembua families are now fighting over the kingship of the Ijebu kingdom.
The fighting is for them. Fighting. Good morning, Dr. Ruben. Hey, good morning, Dr. Ruben. Good morning, Ayo. And good morning, Rufai.
Femi,
how's
you
everybody?
are the only one I can call First Lady of International Correspondence.
Oh,
the any other First Lady
any other? Okay, no problem. I'll take it. I'll take it. Let me double it for you.
No, the board of editors is the body that can decide.
I said I.
Rufai has spoken.
I'm not saying board
of editors. Let me tell you
I'm saying
what
First Lady of International Correspondence by my standard.
Appreciate it. I love the love. Thank you all.
Let her tell us about Fuchembua and Fidipote.
And everybody, it's coming up in the newspaper review, actually.
Is it part of
it's coming up. Good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Do not mind my colleagues. Do not mind them. Let me tell you what is happening around the world. Firstly, Burkina Faso has released the 11 Nigerian Air Force pilots and crew members 9 days after their detention following high-level diplomatic intervention by the Nigerian government. So if you look at the pictures there, you can see that Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Maitama Tuga, led a delegation, a high-level delegation, which also included senior officials from the Ministry of Defense to Ouagadougou, where they met with Burkina Faso's military leader, President Ibrahim Traoré. Now, Burkina Faso initially detained 11 military personnel who were all aboard the Nigerian Air Force C-130 aircraft after it made an emergency landing in Bobo Dioulasso without prior airspace clearance. This is a move that the Burkinabe authorities described as a violation of its sovereignty. Now, the Nigerian Air Force said that the landing was a precautionary emergency stop due to technical issues and was conducted in accordance with standard safety procedures and international aviation protocols. Nevertheless, we are happy that our crew members have been released. Moving on now, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he has issued a final warning to this gentleman right here. His name is Roman Abramovich. Football fans definitely know who he is. He is the former owner of Chelsea Football Club, and they issued this ultimatum to him. They want him to transfer £2.5 billion from the sale of Chelsea, the football club. They want them to use that money, for humanitarian causes for Ukraine or face legal action. Let's not forget that Roman Abramovich is Russian. Now, the funds, which had been frozen since 2022 due to UK sanctions imposed on Abramovich, are intended to support victims of Russia's war in Ukraine. Abramovich himself did pledge to donate the proceeds from the sale of Chelsea to Ukrainian humanitarian causes, but since then, he has failed to do so. So, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, they've both emphasised that the UK government is prepared to take Abramovich to court if he does not honour his commitment. Meanwhile, the UK government has also issued a licence to release the funds, which will be transferred to a charitable foundation supporting Ukrainian humanitarian efforts. Abramovich says he actually has 90 days in order to act before the UK takes another step towards legal action. So we'll just have to see what happens there. It's got 3 months. Now, going over to the United States now, the US military has carried out another lethal strike on a vessel in the Eastern Pacific. This time they've killed 4 people. In a post on X, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wrote that a lethal kinetic strike was carried out on a vessel operated by a designated terrorist organization in international waters, not American ones, international waters. He said intelligence confirmed that the vessel was transiting along a known narco-trafficking route in the Eastern Pacific and was engaged in narco-trafficking operations. Now, a total of 4 male narco-terrorists, as he called them, were killed in this operation, and he goes on to say that no US military forces were harmed. Well, of course not. The announcement comes a day after Donald Trump announced that a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela would be coming into effect. Now, on Tuesday, the Pentagon did say that it carried out strikes on 3 boats accused of trafficking drugs in the Pacific. That time, they killed 8 people. Since the 2nd of September, more than 20 strikes have killed at least 99 people, most of them off the coast of Venezuela. So a lot happening in the international scene. Let's move on now to our newspaper headlines. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. And today, This Day does lead with a big story. That is, of course, the federal government has announced the resignation of Nigerian Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Agency CEO Farouk Ahmed and his upstream counterpart, Benga Komolafe, nominating in their places Saidu Mohammed and Orishemeyiwa Eyisan as their replacements. This is subject to Senate confirmation. The development comes amid allegations against Ahmed, specifically linked to his dispute with Alhaji Aliko Dangote with the Nigerian Bar Association, insisting that the allegations must still be fully investigated despite Farouk's exit. Well, moving on to another paper, let us take a look at the Daily Sun this morning. The Daily Sun does report that a lawmaker, Abdulsamad Dasuki, has alleged that Nigeria's newly gazetted tax reform laws were altered from the versions passed by the National Assembly. He's calling it a constitutional breach, and that's as the House vows to investigate this discrepancy. Let's take a look at the Leadership newspaper this morning. The Leadership reports that the Senate President Godswill Akpabio, he did meet with U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria. His name is Richard Mills. They met in Abuja to discuss strengthening bilateral and legislative relations. This is coming, of course, as the United States has expressed concerns. President Donald Trump's partial travel restrictions have affected Nigerians, and we took that story on yesterday's World Brief. Moving on to the Daily Trust this morning. The Daily Trust does report that President Tinubu may present the 2026 budget, estimated at about 54.4 trillion naira, later this week after the Senate passed the 2026 to 2028 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph does report that widespread load shedding has hit several states, and that is as gas line pipeline vandalism continues to drop gas supply here in Nigeria. The Daily Independent takes a different story. We'll take a look at that. The Daily Independent does report that the families of banditry victims in northwest Nigeria have appealed to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the story is just here, have appealed to the president to investigate allegations by bandit leader Bello Truji against two former governors, Ahmed Sani Yerima of Zamfara State and Atahiru Bafarawa of Sokoto. This family is saying that they want those claims investigated because they believe that policies initiated by Yerima and Bafarawa during their tenures as governors, particularly the seizure of grazing reserves and the arming of vigilante groups, have laid the groundwork for the escalation of banditry that we are seeing in the region. That's what the families say they want the president to investigate. Let us move on to The Punch, which is the reason why I'm always having to fight for my family's name every morning. So The Punch, just on the bottom here, there's a story that says the Ogun State government has cancelled the ongoing selection process of the new Awujale of Ijebu land over procedural errors. Please, over procedural errors. Now, this follows the state government. They summoned the representatives of the Fushegbunwa family house, their ruling house, and the Awujale Interrogative Administration Committee to a meeting on Tuesday. The process, initiated, of course, after the death of our dearly departed Obasiku Kayode Adeton on the 14th of July, will soon restart to ensure strict compliance with Ogun State chieftaincy laws and avoid potential litigation. I have to say that when it becomes my family's turn, you won't see chaos like this. We're organized people. Moving on to our British papers.
What do you mean?
Please, let me finish. I'll tell you later. The I-paper from the United Kingdom does have that the British military is in advanced preparations to send a peacekeeping mission to Ukraine. And finally, if you take a look at the Financial Times this morning, I think the Financial Times is our last paper, we do good. This story right here. So the Warner Brothers Discovery Board has urged its shareholders to reject Paramount's $108 billion bid for the company. There's a lot going on there. So yeah, this is what we're seeing from a World Brief to our newspaper reviews. These are our stories from around the world.
Okay, I'm not going to talk about the Fusheng-Boas and the Fidik-Potters, but Femi, you have to tell us what you mean afterwards.
I'll tell you afterwards.
But real quickly, I think the Trump administration is showing its disrespect for international conventions. Mm-hmm. Yet another strike, but Pete Hegseth does not want accountability. Mm-hmm. And all of this segues into the Vanity Fair interview with Weiss, where she talked about that the fact that Trump acts like somebody in a drunken state.
Yes, with a,
and many other things she said. Do you know, it was so bad that it was said that I think a general in the army was trying to tell Hegseth about the implication of a strike. And he says, I instruct you to strike, don't ask me questions. Yeah. And you cannot build a society that way. So America is sleeping. And yet another one that Hegseth and Rubio, Hegseth most importantly doesn't want to take accountability for. As regards Abramovich, the truth is, yes, the money is in Fordham investment, an account that is linked to him. He says he wants a broader outplay with that money to be able to give to many charities and other war victims. But the UK government is saying they want to give it to a charity that has to do with Ukrainian survivors. Yep. I think they should meet halfway. The 90-day threshold is there. And I think that money should be used for those people, most importantly, those people that are suffering from the war. Because Russia, that Abramovich benefited heavily from, and Putin, it was through him that he made the money to buy Chelsea in the first place. And it's a proceed of that sale.
All right, so the issue here in Russia, I mean the United Kingdom and their issue with Roman Abramovich, former owner of Chelsea Club, is that there's a war to be funded. And Europe is finding ways to fund that war. They had to fund, they have budget constraints. And so they are reviewing proposals to have frozen assets of Russians in Europe use proceeds from their sales of that to fund the Ukrainian war, especially humanitarian concerns. Now, specifically to Abramovich, when he sold Chelsea under a deal reached between him and the UK government, the agreement was that proceeds, he was not going to benefit from it. He wasn't going to benefit from the profits of the sale. And so they realized £2.5 billion pounds from that, and that money was supposed to go specifically to Ukraine, especially supporting humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. Despite that, it's been held in an account that he still legally owns, but he doesn't have access to. Yes. Despite that, years later, he has not made good on that agreement, and that's the contention here. He cannot now, down the line, choose to decide to, you know what, I don't want to give it to Ukraine anymore, I want to do X, Y, Z. Yes. The deal when he sold Chelsea was that he was going to give proceeds to fund humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. The dicey thing here, again, like you mentioned, is that he has close ties, even though he has denied it a number of times, with Putin. And so he's saying, oh, no, he doesn't, but he cannot, he doesn't want to give the proceeds to it. But the issue here is around agreements, reneging on agreements, and legal options following this. And so 90 days afterwards, the UK might sue if it does not make good on his promise.
Okay, very quickly on Abramovich. The issue here is that Abramovich now says that he's not going to give only to Ukraine, that he will also give to victims in Russia. And you can understand where he's coming from. He was sanctioned originally because he's an ally of Putin and because of the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. After 90 days, England says they will go to court. Maybe the matter is a developing story. When they go to court, we'll see what comes out of it. The Nigerian effort in Burkina Faso, I've said, is a triumph of diplomacy. And on both sides, we need to commend President Tinubu and the Nigerian delegation, and also the head of the military junta in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, for allowing good reason to fail, to triumph, yes. to prevail. That's the word I was looking for. Finally, I go back to the issue about NMDPRA and NUPRC. I used a Latin word from juvenile satire earlier on, qui custodit ipso custodis, who guards the guardians. Now, what I need to add very quickly is that if you look at some of these bodies, they don't have boards. So apart from appointing new persons to NMDPRA and UPRC, President Tinubu must also expeditiously constitute the board. Because what the board does is to play oversight role. Yes. Many of these agencies that we have, including the central bank, they don't have a board. So we want to know who guards the guardians, who polices the police, who governs the governors. So for us to have transparency and accountability, and I repeat the point, that here, we would like other people to follow the example of Alhaji Aliko Dangote. If you know anything about something, say it. And ICPC has a function with regard to public officers to investigate. because that will be the patriotic line. That will be the right thing
Yes.
to do.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you so much, Adefemi. Thank you. We'll see you again tomorrow. Final one for the week tomorrow.